Kia ora koutou e te whana, ko Matt Highway aho, he kaimahi aho mātua kaiwhakahare, NZARM, New Zealand Association of Resource Management. Nō reira tēnā koutou katoa. So good afternoon everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. So on NZARM's Capability Builder. Really good to see you or have you attend. My name is Matt Highway. I act as the Chief Executive for NZARM and I'm a Director for Element Environmental. So if we could just start the day with a short karakia, that would be great, and then we'll hand over to Adrian and just introduce some of the administration for today. E te hui, whai te mataronga kia marama, kia whai take ngā mahi katoa. Tu maia, tu kaha, aroha atu, araha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa. So that is, for this gathering, seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all that you do, stand tall, be strong, let us show respect for each other. It's really nice. So we have an hour for today's webinar. It may be shorter depending on how many questions we have. Adrian will speak for sort of 25 or 30 minutes or so, and then we can ask some Q&A at the end. So feel free to come and go as you please. We will record this, so if you wanted to go back and watch it at a later time, that's fine too. So it's my pleasure to introduce Adrian Brocksopp. He'll be speaking us today. Adrian is a consultant for Element Environmental and is leading this work on the NZARM Capability Builder on behalf of NZARM. So that, Adrian has a range of experience in leading environmental projects, including with Ravensdown, Balance, DairyNZ, and has an experience in farming and a huge passion to support farmers make environmental change. So we're really lucky to have Adrian come along today and be part of this project. So yeah, over to you, Adrian. Oh, sorry, one last thing, just apologies, Adrian. Just in the Q&A box, if you wiggle your mouse around, there's a Q&A box. Just as we go, post your questions in there and we can answer them towards the end. So just as you think of them, just go for it there. And over to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koe mātua, tēnā koe whare, o tira tēnā koutou katoa. So welcome everyone to the presentation, to a bit of an update on the Capability Builder, and for some it may be new. So thank you for coming along. So the Capability Builder is a project that's co-funded by the New Zealand NZARM, so New Zealand Association of Resource Management, MFE, and then also regional councils. So it's really great that we've got a lot of people in the room working towards the same purpose. The great thing about the project is that the funding or the support from regional councils is not just monetary, it's also funding in terms of in-kind work, because there's a real recognition as that we've got some really good skill sets there. So how can we look to harness those skill sets moving forward? And that's one of the aims over the next 3 years. So the project, so it's a 3-year partnership between the councils, NZARM and MFE. And what the aim is to deliver a platform that help us to help people to look to see where they are in their development, assess that, and then to be able to give them guidance as to things they could be doing in the future to aim towards where they want to be. Also, we're looking at wanting to develop a way of recognising that. So at the moment, NZARM has an informal certificate for resource management, and we're looking to see if that can be more formalised. That's still a work in progress, but providing a more robust process for assessing that and the ability for people to use that moving forward. So why are we doing this? So firstly, there's no existing national register of that can inform people as to where people are at. So whether that be regional councils, could be farmers looking for things, or it could be consultants looking for support in specialisms. Also, there's a real realisation, and freshwater farm plans is one thing, but we're all on a journey of improving our training and our professional development. So it's being able to look to say, well, are those needs currently being met? Are the opportunities there available? And if not, what can we do to help that? And so, as well as increasing everyone's personal capability, it's also looking at that capacity as well, not just for freshwater farm plans, but also for in the general sector in terms of whether it be supports for consents, whether it supports land use change, environmental initiatives, catchment work. There's a whole host of things. So for those who have been to MFE presentations, they'll be well aware of this. So this is a bit of a diagram showing where they see some of the process of freshwater farm plans will be in terms of a journey that you'll consultant or the council will take the farmer along to get to a farm plan that's going to be in place. So looking at that, bringing information in to look at that bigger picture in terms of the catchment values, information you got, catchment priorities, overlaying that information about the farm, its inherent risks and management risks, and then how do we facilitate that discussion to work out, well, what are we doing okay already that's good, where are the gaps, so where are those particular actions, and then once we've got actions, thinking about how can we help to prioritize them. So CCVC, so catchment context, is a hot topic at the moment as to how that would be used, and with the ultimate aim that everyone will have an action plan on their farm. Initially it'll be the freshwater farm plan, but who knows what that will move into in years to come, integrated farm planning, and making sure that helping to ensure that farmers are really engaged and landowners are engaged in this process. So we've been seeking feedback from people in the resource management sector, and these are some of the things that they've come up with, and this is helping to focus where we need to be supporting this process through the project. So when we're looking at capacity, people talking about the moving of deck chairs of people leaving roles to go to other roles, that puts pressure on businesses and regional councils in terms of the time it takes to recruit people, training of new staff, and having the skill sets internally to actually train those new staff. So it's not just the training, it's the resources that you need. So one thing that people have highlighted is that there is actually capability at two levels. One is that for people who want to do freshwater plans or go beyond, who want to be in some respects subject matter experts, but there's also that 101 knowledge and awareness. So to support farmers, to support landowners, levy payers, or shareholders, whatever it may be. When we look at, well, what support are they looking for, or what knowledge do we need? It's actually across the board. But when you look at people, so contaminant losses always came up as being pretty high, but with sediment being the highest, I think with nitrogen, a lot of councils, a lot of people, we've been working towards that for a long time. But it's sediment, and especially with the unfortunate weather conditions we've had over the last 6 months, is really at the fore again. People are really keen that we're future-proofing. So with freshwater farm plans, that we're making sure we're having conversations about greenhouse gases, biodiversities, etc. So we're not having to go back on what we've talked about now, because we've already integrated that into the conversations when we have more conversations in a few years' time. Another challenge is just the sheer quantity of support that's required, not just in freshwater farm plans, but helping farmers to make good decisions and make that change. And that comes through with those timelines can often be shortened because the expectations or the internal processes we often get to know at the last minute, and we're developing on the fly, and we're leading on this. So sometimes it's very difficult to be really firm. If looking at freshwater farm plans, councils are very clear about wanting to be really clear what certification schemes, quality control, and etc. look like. And we're not the certification scheme. We're here to help training and development, and not be that certification scheme. But part of this program will be to work closely with that certification scheme. Very important that came out really strongly was making sure landowner welfare and also our own welfare is taken into account when we're looking at this. So providing people with the tools and to work through that. And then CCVC, so the catchment context, a pretty new concept to a lot of people. So having better learning on that. So when we overlay some of those things onto the diagram that MFE have used. These are the kind of the skill sets that we're kind of looking for when you look to see where they are. So overall, you've got, what are the communication skill sets, critical conversations, landowner engagement? What do all those things look like? Those attributes that somebody needs to have to actually allow the whole process to work seamlessly and be an engaged process. And then within that process, we've got the understanding of the bigger picture. So how are we going to approach it? Our understanding of tangata whenua, catchment context, overlaying on that the core knowledge. So some of that could be just core knowledge and then some specialist knowledge, and then interlinking whole farm systems. So nothing that you look at is, I always say when there's an action, there's always a reaction. So it's working out where they are on a farm and what does that mean. And then transitioning a farmer through the rest of the process, but around the conversations to work out which of the actions we're going to do and how to prioritize those. And the aim is, in the end, we're going to have an engaged landowner with smart actions that are with good timelines that he can implement, and most importantly, we're getting on-farm change and improvements to a reduction in contaminants off farm. Just to focus on some of those skill sets that I've highlighted. So that's just putting them in more detail as to what they are. And so some of it is, you would say is general, but then some of it, what comes out is that real specialist technical knowledge. So things that came to the fore in most regions was intensive cropping, intensive winter grazing, plantation forestry, reversion and land use change. So some real skill sets, and as we look at those, I look at that and say, well, yeah, some of those things I'm learning as I go. It's new to me, so that maybe that could be where it's some of the support we need. Whereas when I look at the technical knowledge, I can tick a lot of those off already, but then there could be things in there, biodiversity, wetlands, etc., which again, are my areas for focus moving forward, and we'll come back to that to see what that looks like. So how's this all going to be packaged together? So this is a bit of a diagram of the actual process. So NZARM at the moment are in the process of developing a new website, which should hopefully be out in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And with the aim of that website, it will be the portal for the register or the capability project as well. So as part of that process, there's the opportunity for members and non-members to come in and go through the register where and I'll go through that in detail in a minute, where their site their requirements are assessed against to see what they've done already. Then we can look to see where their skill gaps are, and as a result of that, direct them towards targeted training. The other cool thing is that about the project is there's an opportunity to look at what does mentoring look like. So as people get into the end of their careers, saying, well, how can we help those people to give back, whether it be in their current roles or roles they're moving into or into semi-retirement, to help mentor new people through. It's often talked about that's what we're losing. As people move around a lot more now, which is okay. We're actually losing that ability for mentoring and one-to-one in the field with the person that's got the 5, 10, 15 years experience or the specialist skill sets. And then out come the end is a recognition of what your achievement is, and we're still working through what that looks like in terms of certificate. And the hope is that this could guide people towards making sure they've got the right skill sets depending on what the certification requirements are for freshwater farm plans. So just to focus in a bit more on the requirements, so as we go through the process, there'll be a questionnaire where we'll start to ask a few questions of the person, so we can start to see who they are, where they are, what their education's been, both formal and informal. And as you can see there, we've got 120 courses from New Zealand, formal courses that have been put into the register and determined against a matrix of competencies. Plus, we'll also be asking questions around informal courses because not everything's formal. So what you've worked on there. The core skill sets that we'll base that across are shown there, and that could develop over time as new subject areas as we go into integrated management plans. We'll be able to extend out and people will be able to come in and re-update their skill sets as new courses come in. So if there's courses that we've not got in the system, we can add those in, so it's more of an automatic process rather than a manual. But the important thing for me is that then we're starting to look at within those areas, what are your interests, or where do you feel you're at the moment? So here's an example for one, for a competency. So over the course of a career, indicate your level of knowledge in this field, or for this question. So this one is the influence of inherent landscape characteristics and management practices have on losses to erosion due to overland flow. So we're looking for two things here: is put a mark to say where you feel you are at the moment. So I'll say I'm at the level that I can explain, but then also put a mark as to where you want to be. So if you're explaining that's comfortable for where you need to be in terms of your role and your career development, there may not be too much training to do there, but if you want to go from explain to confident teach, we can then use the register to look to see, well, what are the gaps in that skill set area, and then what are the courses that could fill those gaps. So that's just shown there. And then also indicate what your years are experiencing there. So the aim of this is to actually work through and give people recognition for time they've got in the field, because you don't necessarily have to go and learn every single thing from a textbook. It's often a lot of it you'll learn by osmosis as you're in field working with people. So that's what we're kind of looking for, to say, how can we get a good feel for where people are at without having always to say, well, the only way to assess you is to go on a course, on a formal course. So then the inputted data that you put in gets assessed against the criteria. So in the criteria I've shown earlier, we've got the 12 topics. Within those topics, there's a number of principles, and then within those principles, there's a number of competencies. So, and we split the competencies according to, is that something you'd expect someone who's introductory to be able to know, or someone who's accomplished? So I kind of see it as the accomplished people would be someone who would probably go out and do a freshwater farm plan to that kind of standard, whereas introductory could be a basic introduction. So we've got an example there of, so we say for waterways, we've got the 3 principles. Within each principle, we've got some introductory competencies, and we've got some accomplished competencies. Then we use those competencies and information you've given us to mark the skill sets off against the courses that you've been on. And as I said, there's a big long list of these. So this can be a fairly automated process to start to break that down to say, well, what have you already done? But then, and then the supplementary questions around your experience and where you feel you're at is, you've probably learned it, but have you got the confidence? Are you applying it how you would like to? So if take, for example, here, this is me as a bit of example. So we start looking at, say, somewhat what the skill set gaps are. The top one, sorry, I left the made headers off, but the top one, the first 3 boxes relate to effluent. So I've got a good history in effluent, but most of the stuff I've learnt by osmosis, and this actually highlighted that when when we trialed it and I went through the process. So as a result of that, I the other week went on the warranty fitness effluent course. So then the next time I come into this process, I can tick that box to say, I'm feeling a lot stronger. In one, I've got the formal qualification or certificate, but also informally I feel a lot more confident. And that would be my aim, to work through some of those and then hopefully tick all the boxes, so then I can say I've got a certificate to a certain standard. And it may be with that experience, it may not direct us to a course. It could actually be some technical reading or a webinar, etc. So one of the aims of this is to be a real good go-to point for people to come to be linked into other industries and to be linked into other organizations, so we can make sure everyone can see what's there. That is all going to be achieved through the new website. So this is just a few screenshots of the website. So you could say we'll be building a bit of a knowledge hub. So in that knowledge hub, there'll be a various number of things. So like normal websites, there'll be all the admin side of being part of NZARM. There'll also be the register, so a process to work through. And then there could be further reading. So we could link you to further reading that we already know that's there. Could be training events. So here, for example, here there's the advertisement for this webinar, probably not so much of a technical webinar, but in a few weeks we'll be having another webinar on hill country erosion. So we could have all these up here. So, and these will be built up into compendiums linking to the subjects of the register. So then you can link back to say, well, here's my skill gaps, where's the technical or information available. The third one will be the training. So here, there'll be ability for us as NZARM to promote external opportunities. So on the right-hand side, you can see here, this went out just recently to all NZARM members, which is advertising an NZIPIM event, because that's really important that we can get it out to a wider audience than just NZIPIM members. So it's about giving people the ability. Now, the aim of this program is not to create loads of training that's already out there. It's about helping people to get towards it. Then if we can find there's areas where there's a few people looking to increase support in that area, opportunities for co-development. So development of training in conjunction with the likes of MPI, MFE, etc., or it could be NZIPIM or an external provider, one of the universities, etc. So some of the stuff we're doing at the moment with QCons is in that kind of vein. And then there could be internal NZARM development, which we see not to be at a maximum. It's probably going to be where there's specific skill gaps that we're just seeing. There's probably not a value proposition out there for a formal trainer to go and do that, but it's something that needs to be put in place. Then it's about starting to work that towards recognition of your skills. So considerations that we've got at the moment, as I say, this is a bit that's in process, because as most people are aware, what's happening with NZQA and the Workforce Development Councils is a bit up in the air. That they've had some amalgamations and they're still working through what that looks like. We've got some decisions to make with them to say, well, what does this look like? Is it formal? Is it informal? How do we attribute experience in this and still make it a robust process? And as I mentioned before, there's a great opportunity for mentoring as well. So the diagram on the right just gives you a bit of an idea of what it could look like. So the output could be each person would receive some commentary and a diagram like this to say the results that you've got through would say your introductory or accomplished level in certain areas and expert in others, and it starts to feel, you start to get a feel where the gaps are, and then we start to link those gaps to where your areas of interest are or where your requirements for your role is. So the ultimate aim is we would hopefully be able to and I've put there as framing that you would be able to receive a certificate in resource management specialising potentially in biodiversity and catchment understanding according to what the results came back. That's the bit we're still working through, but so the main focus at the moment is around getting the register set up and start thinking about the training, but the long-term aim is around what does the recognition of skills look like. So just a couple of slides to finish off. So as we've already found already, we're going to have to be really agile with this project. There's already been a few stops and starts, and because there's a lot of things being developed new. There's a lot of skill sets not out there, so we've got to work out, well, where's our place and how can we help that process. We've got to make sure we're looking forward. So again, there's a lot of people are saying let's not set people up to fail in the future when new expectations come along, but that's very difficult when rules and regulations and expectations and requirements have not been written. So that's going to be difficult. Wanting to work hard to work on partnerships. So we have a stakeholder group that convened just a couple of weeks ago, and so it's making sure we're getting information out as to where we are, and people can talk to us to see where those alignments are for us. And really important for us is building that register and the knowledge and the knowledge that is the knowledge that comes behind that. So just to finish off, we will be successful if we've managed to build this end-to-end service that we've just talked about, which looks at capacity, capability, and also individual training requirements. really keen to find a process that recognises that informal experience, to complement the formal experience that we've got. People are saying to us, this could be seen as a development pathway for people. So it could be used by companies as part of career development for their people to say, well, this can help inform that process. So what does it look like when you're looking at, well, where's my next training? Where do I want to be in five years' time? And most importantly, we need this to be relevant. It's a 3-year funding program, but if it's to be successful and continue post that, it needs to be relevant so people can see the value in it. So we'll work hard to make sure that what it looks like. So that's just a real quick whistle-stop tour of what we're trying to achieve. I'm sure there's going to be a few stops on the journey over the next 3 years, but we're really keen to keep people up to date with where things are at, get input, and like I say, we're looking to get a lot of involvement from regional councils, and we've got a wide project team as well. So we're making sure that we're harnessing and using the skill sets that are already out there. So Matthew, that about finishes me off. Open to questions for me and you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Really appreciate the level of detail you got into there and your deep understanding, obviously, of the project, being the project leader. We do have a couple of questions up at the moment. If there's a few people on the call, so please bang in some more questions there. We've got half an hour if we need it. Feel free to leave or whatever it might be as well. Yeah, feel free to put in some more questions just in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So I'll get into these, Adrian. How are skill sets related to communication and farmer engagement being assessed or taught? Yeah,
so there's a competency in there around those skill sets. So we've competencies we've put together, and so some of those competencies have come through some previous work that was completed by NZARM, and then it's been refined. So it's about working through, well, what are some of those things you would need to be an effective communicator, and that can help us to work out, well, if we find from the when people give their responses that to meet those competencies, it's very difficult to learn that other than self-learning. Is there courses that could be available? And I see NZIPIM have just released the Red Meat Profit Partnership course that Lab Wilson does, which is a really good example of which just helps you to reaffirm what good communication looks like. So, and what we've got at the moment is not set in stone. So I think as we get more feedback coming in and we start to use the register, we can then start to add and take out as we start to refine what do we actually need. I'm sure if we all said what does a farm environment planner or a good person in resource management need to be, we'd probably all come back with different answers, and some of us will have a list as long as our arm and some will be a very short list. So it is a work in progress, and but yeah, it's I think the proof in the pudding will be as we work through it.
Awesome, thank you, Adrian. A couple more questions here. One is, how does this project tie in with MPI's Primary Industry Advisors Career Pathway Scheme? And I'm happy to add something to that if you want.
So a good example for that is when I went through my trial and looked at what those gaps were. I've applied for funding for the courses that I'm going to go on to fill my gaps. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Our aim is to make sure we've got all those courses, assessed against our criteria. With that funding, it has probably got a wider scope to what we're looking at. So not all those courses would tick the boxes in some of these, but definitely we're wanting to work closely with them. And I'm sure, Matt, you can add to that.
Thanks, Adrian. The only thing I was going to add from a program point of view is we're closely tied to them. We're NZARM representative on the advisory panel for that project, but also having conversations around making sure that it's aligned in the future. So hopefully that helps, from that level too.
But that would, for me, would be the ultimate aim. If we can help to highlight where the gaps are, And then we've got something like that highlighting the opportunities to actually someone help co-fund you to fill those gaps would be ideal.
Yeah, and it's a great program for those of you who aren't familiar with it. There's lots of different ways to get involved, from early career or career changes. Yeah, would highly recommend having a look at it. It's just on the NPI's website. Cool. Thanks, Adrian. Next question. Would you need to be employed in the industry to go through this process? How could it work for someone trying to get back into employment or into employment?
Yep, we see this as pretty much, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, pretty much open source. So it's only a case of registering with NZARM. You can go, the aim is you'll be able to go through that process. And I see it that someone who's new into the industry, but it's something they could come back to every year, and if they've done some training, update their training, update their years of experience, and then see how their career development against the competencies is building over time. And why we ask the questions about what your areas of focus are is that you might not want to get a complete circle, or have to get a complete circle anyway, but being able to prioritize what's important to your new role as you come into that role. So you become successful in those first few years will also be important. So it could help you there to say, well, I know I've got a lot to learn, but what's really important to me and what's really important to my role to learn first, and where do I go to find that?
Awesome, thank you, Adrian, and well answered. So last question that we've got so far, and please keep adding to the Q&A down the bottom. What do you think the main drivers are for members to join the project? Why would you join?
I'd be joining because it's going to give me a really good idea of where I'm at and what I need to do, because there is a lot of training opportunities out there, and often we don't know what those courses will provide. And I'm sure you're like a number of me. There's a number of courses I've gone on where I've learned the same thing for about 50% of the course. So this will really start to hone in to say, well, which of the things are going to provide you with the knowledge learning? Because if you're a consultant and your time out of the field is you're not being paid because you're on a course, you want to be there for the right reasons. So I think this can really help that. The ultimate aim of this project is that then, if people so wish, there could be a list on the website, the same as something like CNMA, to say which people, if you wanted people to know what your qualifications were. So that's a way of building your business if you're in that consultancy space as well, that people can come on and say, hey, that person has got some specialisms that really interest me in terms of what I feel I want out of my consultant. So for me, no matter where you are, whether you're starting your journey and it's going to help you progress, or you're probably not near the end of your journey, but you're more skilled, it's going to help promote yourself. So I think there's something in it for everyone.
Thanks, Adrian. I'd just like to add one little thing from an NZARM perspective, if I can, which is, this is really human-centric, so user-centric. So it's about looking after the individual as best we can. So whether that's linking you with a mentor or you becoming a mentor, making sure you can access training. A lot of that training will be subsidized or free potentially as well. So, and making sure it's sort of local and relevant to you. So the more you engage, more people engage with the register, the more that we can support people in a more fine-tuned way. But yeah, you might, even if you're employed through council or whoever, might be a way to justify doing training courses, or even showcasing your skill set for, dare I say, promotion or something like that too. So there's lots of useful things, I think, in there beyond what Adrian was saying and what I've just said too. Yeah, thanks, Adrian.
Cool.
Yep, we've got a couple more questions coming in, which is great. How will the capability information be made available to regional councils looking for staff? Good question.
We've not really talked about that internally as around the availability. At the end of the day, I would see any release of information will always be the choice of the person. So if we offer an ability for anything to be made available to external parties, the only person who will choose that will be the person that's information it is. So there may be people who just want to go through it to see where they're at, but there could be people who want to go through use it as a tool to promote their services. And I think having the ability, I think we can do the both with the same tool.
Nice, thank you, Adrian. One more question in here. Please keep going if you've got more questions. If people's self-assessment skill sets are to be made available for public to look at, how do you ensure a level of, oh, sorry, it's a previous question, isn't it? Validity across people's expertise. Oh, it's slightly different. I apologize. So it's around being sure we're consistent and it's valid.
Yeah. And that's the real the work we've got to do around the robustness as to how we assess informal. And that will dictate what level of formality that a certificate will be. Is it something that's formally recognised? Can we go down that route, or is it something that's still classed as an informal certificate? Potentially, we're talking for people who are at the top end, where we're probably looking at the subject matter experts. There could be the ability that we have a bit of an interview just to confirm that what people are saying is 100%. It is something that we're working through to make sure that people are not creating higher expectations than what are there. But it's like anything, any form we fill out, we're hoping for 100% honesty. When we fill forms out, so we'll just have to put parameters around it.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. For those of you familiar with the resource management practicing and professional certificates, which are current, that goes through a certification board. What we wanted to do here a little bit more was standardize it across the country and be really quite robust, but a board is still a very useful way to do that. But we're still working through the details. Thank you. Will there be a fee to become registered? Shall I take that? So
you can take that one, Matt.
I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but because it goes through the NZARM membership approach, then yes, there will be a fee because you've kind of become a member. The membership and the registration will be a little bit one and the same, although you get an option to just be a member of NZARM or part of the registration as well. But the information that we got is that it's probably best to have a fee because it has a value and for people to be engaged with that. The idea is that we launching this will probably do a lot of free stuff to be registered initially, and if it's working for you, then a subscription, an annual subscription would come on later. At the moment, it's quite low. It's $70 for early bird registration, so it's not a huge amount of money, but it would help ongoing with these registration sort of costs, I suppose. You happy with that, Adrian? Okay, thanks. Sorry to jump in there, just an NZARM one.
You've got purse strings.
So one here from, hi Adrian, do you see the skill set requirements for land management advisors being significantly different to those of farm plan advisors? So I assume that would be land management advisors and councils.
Or in terms of the competencies that we've put in here, we're wanting, and we will work very closely with the certification scheme to make sure we're getting some good alignment there. And we're making sure we'll talk to councils a lot around these skill sets. Individual competencies for different jobs in different roles are always going to be unique to those businesses. So we're not going to try and say these need to be all the skill sets to be a certain person in a certain role. It's more about, do you meet the criteria for these skill sets? So I don't see it taking over any job descriptions or anything. I think that's still important and still very meaningful and down to each individual business council, etc.
Great, thanks, Adrian. Another question here, excuse me, it's a comment. Really a good one from coming from the Waikato. Could you possibly add a peer endorsement approach to back up validity and entries of skills, of entries and skills?
Yep, great idea. That's something we can look at. Like I say, that side of it is probably a bit further down the track. So, you know, we'll definitely be coming out to the market to talk to people to say, well, in your experience, what works well? What would you like to see to have confidence in what we're delivering? No, initially, let's get people on the road, help them to get to some training, help us to work out where the training gaps are, and then we can, you know, build some of the other stuff into the certification side of things. So yeah, definitely we see that as a potential.
Great, thank you again, Adrian. There's a last comment here, but I just wonder if you could add a little bit of flavour from what you said before. So the information provided by advisors would not be shared with others, ? This is in response to the question about sharing info with councils looking for staff. If you could just reinforce that one.
Yeah, definitely. We would, you know, 100%. If nobody wants any information to be shared, it's their private information. I would only see a sharing of information if you wanted to. So it could be that there could be, you know, and it's the same with, you know, I would say CNMA is probably the same. I think there's potentially an opt-in and opt-out there to be on the website if you want or not. And what would be on there would just be your status. So it could be, you know, I've got a certificate in resource management specializing in biodiversity, and that would be it. You wouldn't have all the other detail because that's a given because you've been through the process. Or you may choose not to have your name on there and it's just your personal information. So again, that's what we'll work through, but that's now how I would see things if I was coming through the process.
Cool. One more question's come through, Adrian. What has the feedback from industry and council been on the project?
Yeah, pretty good. I would say there's some areas of what we're doing people are unsure because some of it is groundbreaking in terms of, you know, are we getting ahead of the game in terms of some of the things we're looking to develop? Make sure you're not stepping on people's toes. To other people saying this is something that we've wanted for a long time because there's, you know, we are seeing a gap in capacity and capability and we're just not sure how to fill this. And we're actually finding it's very difficult to support increasing capacity and capability in our own businesses internally anymore. So we're looking for external support to say what the gaps are, and then external support to say what's the training look like? Can we have some external mentoring, all those things? So no, I think we'll find most industries will be able to get something out of it, you know, according to complement what they're already doing.
Nice one. Thank you, Adrian. There's no more questions and comments coming through, but I'll keep an eye on that just while we think about closing. Anything, if you're a participant today, this gets recorded. So if you've got further questions, just either email Adrian or myself, or you can still put them in the Q&A while this is open. Just want to really thank you, Adrian, for your time and expertise and sharing it with the NZARM members and others who have joined this call. You really appreciate it. And also thanks to, you know, without MFE, regional councils, this project wouldn't have happened, and a lot of their sort of thinking has gone into this, but also other partners that we've talked to in the, you know, agriculture and forestry, horticulture, industries, projects like Kaupapa Moana, CRIs like Manaki Whenua, and other smaller businesses, consultancies. You really appreciate their support. This is a big team of people which Adrian is leading, so it's challenging and there's a lot of input. So again, thank you, Adrian, for what you've done there. And thank you all for attending. This will get recorded and go on our website. But I'll just bring it to a close with a karakia and let you carry on with your day. Thanks again. Kua mutu mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, manakitia mai tātou katoa. O mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ai ki te aorangi. So our work is finished for the moment. Bless us all, our colleagues, our families, peace to the universe. Go well, everyone. Thanks again, and ka kite.